Hello, today we're going to look at a rhombi or a rhombus, a rectangle and a square all in one lesson because they're pretty quick. All right, first off, a rhombus. A rhombus is a parallelogram with congruent sides. So if I made a quick sketch of a rhombus, it's like a parallelogram, but we got to make sure the sides are the same length. So that is reasonable. Now, what do we know about a rhombus? Well, we know all sides are congruent. That's from the definition. We know that the opposite sides are parallel. We know that the opposite angles are congruent, and opposite angles are consecutive angles are supplementary. We also know that the diagonals bisect each other. I should do 3 there. Or I guess I only have 1 there, so I can do 2 here and 2 there. All right. So all this we know because we know it is a parallelogram. So since it's a parallelogram, we know all of these properties we learned about in the parallelogram video. Now, if we wanted to solve some problems, since it's a rhombus, that's going to be 12. Since it's a parallelogram and a rhombus, that's going to be 70, and this is going to be 110. And the diagonals bisecting each other, that gives us x is 4 and y is 5. All right, now there's 2 new rules that for rhombi is the diagonals are perpendicular. So if I draw the diagonals across at 90 degrees, and the diagonal bisects the pair of opposite angles. So these two are going to be congruent. And since this is the same thing, and it's also cut in half, those are exactly the same size as those. Now over here, this one is the same as this one, which is going to be the same as this opposite side. So these are the new properties specific to any rhombus. So if we know one angle, like 40, we can find all the other angles in this rhombus because of that. The central angle, all of those are, since these are perpendicular, all of these are 90. And now this is a triangle. Add up, subtract from 180, and these all will be 50. So by knowing just one angle, we're able to get all of those. Now a rectangle is a type of parallelogram with equal angles. So if I did a quick sketch of a rectangle, we know that the angles would all be equal. So that means they're all 90 degrees because 360 divided by 4. What else do we know? Well, it's a parallelogram, so opposite sides are parallel. We know opposite angles are congruent and supplementary in consecutive, but that doesn't quite matter here. Now, another thing we know is that our diagonals bisect each other, meaning that each of these is going to be cut in half. Now, our new property for this, first one's not much of a property. You've known that for a long time. The measure of each angle of a rectangle is 90. But the new thing is that the diagonals are congruent. And since the diagonals are congruent and they bisect each other, each part is congruent again. So that creates 4 isosceles triangles within a rectangle. Now, one common question is find the measure of x given these. Pretty much, since they're the same size, you just set them equal to each other. Oh, that's supposed to be a minus 9. So if I subtract 4x on both sides, I'll get 3x. Add 9 to both sides, we'll get 12. And divide by 3, and our x will be 4. Here's a situation. Where's that z floating around? I think the z was supposed to be, oh no, yeah, z was supposed to be this whole length. Now, if we know that this is, well, first, if this angle is 90 degrees, we can, 180 minus 90 is 90. So then we have 90 between these two. 90 subtract 22 should get us to 68. We know this is an isosceles triangle, so if that's 22, that's 22. Add these together and we get 44. Subtract from 180 and we get 136. Now if I want to find z, since this is a right triangle, we can use Pythagorean Theorem. 8 squared plus 15 squared is equal to c squared. So that's 64 plus 225, which comes out to a real nice number of 289, because when you square root that, that will equal 17. So our z in this situation is 17. Now a square, we can either call it an equiangular rhombus, or we can say an equilateral rectangle. Either way you think about it, it takes all the properties of a parallelogram, a rhombus, and a rectangle because it's all of those combined. Now from there, I think you can finish the rest.